Yeah, my whole life I've been kind of known as kind of like a tough guy and a fighter in my circles, uh, especially in jail and in institutions, prisons and stuff. Because I train harder. At first, I was lifting weights, but they got rid of the weights, and then I started doing like bar work and push-ups and squats and jogging, and I stayed really fit, you know. And I was motivated to be kind of aggressive and a fighter, you know, more so than I am out on the streets. Uh, but nonetheless, I know that there's been times where nobody's that tough, nobody's that lucky, that stuff has happened that I know was protecting me from something bad happening. Not necessarily me getting hurt sometimes, but more along the lines of me having to do something when I was in there that would have left a horrible moral injury. If people understand, people that are in religious, you know, the church, they understand what a moral injury is. Like people going to war, you know, and they come out and they regret some of the stuff they did. And I don't like to admit this because I'm a tough guy. As I get older, and especially as I get closer to the Lord, I want to be more passive and more loving, and I don't want to be stressed out, and I let stuff that would bother me and make me get kind of belligerent or aggressive just flow right through me because I don't need the stress anymore, especially in my condition right now. And I might be heading toward the end of my stay here on earth, and I want to go out witnessing to people about Jesus, and I got to set a good example and all that, whatever. So this next occurrence was years and years later after the mental hospital thing. I mean, I went in and out of jail a lot, and there was some incidents, but nothing like this. I think I was about 35 years old. Yeah, about 35 years old. And I was just starting to go to prison in California. As a matter of fact, I was just about to head into prison in California. I'd already been to prison in Arizona. I'll tell a story about that too, but I'm not going to do these in sequential order. But I was going into LA County Jail. I was in LA County Jail, and I was going to eventually head off to prison. I've been convicted of a pretty light felony. I was only going to do like 2 years, but which is a short time. But I was going to have a prison number and be on parole. But I was going into LA County Jail, and they took me into it's a rough prison. I've been in there like 30 times. It's a rough jail. And it's terrible. I mean, getting out of that jail and going to prison is like a reward. People just like oh, thank God when they get out of there. Although prison's no joke in California either. So they got a lot of dorms too, but they have cells also. And at this time, I was going into this tier that had cells, and they were like, at this time they weren't. Sometimes they'd have like 6-man cells, and they had 8 people in them, 2 people sleeping on the floor. This time the feds had come in and said you can't do that, and there was just a 6-man cell with 6 people in it. But anyway, they open the gate, and I'm walking down the tier, and they get to the number that they tell me to go into, and I'm standing there, and they open up the gate for me to walk in, and I'm looking in there, and there's 5 black guys in there. There's no other color in there. There's no Mexicans, there's no Asians, there's no white guys, nothing. And these guys are looking at me like, what the hell? And I just walk into the cell. The door closes behind me. I haven't had a shower. I've been in like the holding tanks at the courthouse for like 3 or 4 days. And I'm homeless too, so I probably hadn't had a shower in about a week anyway. I hadn't, gotten cleaned up, so I'm stinky. So there's something called bird bathing. So I just go back, I'm going to take a bird bath, and I stink. Yeah, maybe you should, whatever. These guys are looking at me like, fucking, what the hell are you doing in here? And I'm sitting there, take off all my clothes, and we stretch a sheet over it. Everybody bird baths in there because they only have to get out of your cell once a week to take a shower. And I get a glass, and I'm sitting there, dumping water over me. You're going to mop up the floor with the towel after you're done and wring it out, prison style, bird bath it's called. I bird bath up, And one of the guys is kind of looking at me belligerently. He's like, yeah, good thing you ain't got any of those damn lightning bolts or swastikas on you, because there'd be a problem. I'm like, well, I don't. I'm not letting some sweaty pig push up on me with a tattoo gun. It's not my style. Well, whatever. I put my clothes back on, get on, and jump on my rack. And they're all big, tough-looking guys. They're gangbangers from South Central, Inglewood, and Compton. But there's one guy that's the biggest of them all. He looks like a black Incredible Hulk. He's not that tall. He's only like 5'8", but he weighs like 275 pounds. Solid muscle, man. You know? I'm 5'8" and weigh, 160, Yeah, it weighs me 100 pounds, okay? There's a couple older guys that were, like, weaker than me, all crackheads and stuff like that, but whatever. And he looks over at me and he's like, why the hell did you come in here, man? With all these black gangsters in here, and you're white. I went, man, I'm state raised. I've been coming out of jail my whole life. I've been to prison in Arizona before this, too. In the state mental hospital, and I'm like, I've been trained, you don't refuse to go into a place. Nah, man, I'm not going into this dorm. Somebody in here, I don't like them, or they're my enemy, or I'm scared to go in this cell. What was I going to do? Go to the guards and say I'm not going to go in that cell? Then it brought the heat down on you guys. It would have been, what's going on in there? It'd be like dry snitching. It's like snitching if you don't go in the cell. And it makes you look like a punk or a lame. I said, yeah, it'd make me look like I'm weak or lame. I'm not doing that. I don't care what happens. And he was like, right on, because it's convict code. And he was like old school. He's like, right on. Because he knew it was true. If I'd have refused to go in that cell, the cops would have been, what's going on? They would have come and like, hey, why wouldn't this guy come in this cell? It would have just brought heat down on him. And I could see him looking at me like, cool, right on. Some of the other guys in there wanted to jump me, beat me up, okay? Because they didn't like white guys. They were racist. But this big guy, he could have beat up everybody in that cell by himself if they all tried to jump him. And basically, there's like comments. I was like busting back and going, making snide comments. I'd say snide comments back. Not going to let you push me around, But the big dude, I was just calling the big guy, said, hey, listen, leave him alone. Okay? Unless one of you guys just want to go one-on-one with him. And anyway, there would have been a problem with that. Because about an hour after I was in there, some white dude in the cell, like three cells down, was like, hey, Wood, in cell, I don't remember what the cell number was, but he called out to me. I'm like, yeah, what? He's like, how you doing over there? I'm like, I'm okay. He was asking me if I was in trouble with these guys, if something bad was going to happen. Because there was plenty of white guys and Serenos, Mexican mafia, guys in there. And if those guys would have jumped me and fucked me up, there would have been a riot. As soon as the doors racked to go to the shower or whatever store, everybody in there would have, all the Woods and the essays would have rushed in there and attacked those black guys. So there was that. But sometimes that's not good enough. They'll just do it anyway and they'll kick a riot off. Guys, I should have gotten something bad should have happened to me for going in that cell. But it didn't. Because there's a couple of guys in there that really wanted to fuck me up. They wanted to jump me. Two of them wanted to jump me. And a couple of them were like old crackhead guys. They're older than me. My age now, that I am now in their 50s. And they didn't want any trouble, But if they'd have been forced to, if the consensus of everybody in the cell, they'd have had to. Bad things could have happened. Well, I've been in there for a couple days, and it was late at night. We were all sleeping, I thought. And I wake up, and I turn over and look, and these guys have the air conditioning grate. They somehow dug through the air conditioning grate and got it where they could pull it out, and they had these mop sticks that they busted off. They'd have a mop stick, and they busted it in several pieces, and they were sharpening. They're like down there sharpening on the thing, and I turn over and look, and the big guy looks at me, don't worry, Jeff, this ain't for you. We're just getting these ready because we're going to rob or sell some Asians when we go to store tomorrow. Get ourselves some store. You know, roll over and go back to sleep. I sit there and looked at him for a second and went, what can I do, you know? Kind of rolled over. I didn't go back to sleep. I sit there and listened to him sharpening these things to me. Kind of like watching the shadows on the wall to see if they're going to come at me and start stabbing me if I was going to have to fight for my life. He didn't do it. They got them sharpened up really good and they stuck them back in the grate, put the grate back on, and then they laid back down. And we all went to sleep. But anyway, I went through like a week in that cell, you know, with those guys. After a while, they kind of like eased up because they had no choice because the big guy had me under his wing, basically. He didn't. He wasn't going to protect me, but he was going to make sure it's one. If you can one, because he told him, you want to fight this guy, it's going to be one-on-one. Because there's the two guys that didn't like me and wanted to beat me up. And he's like, one-on-one. And I was like, I really don't want to do this because if we do, it's going to cause a riot. And the big guy, everybody knew that it would have been a bad idea for me to get into a fight with all those guys because it would have caused tension on the run in the tier, and there could have been a riot, and a bunch of people could have gotten hurt. Some people are down for that, and the Serenials are always down for that. They want to kick it off all the time. And there's some skinheads in there too. I think the Nazi lowriders were starting to come out at that time too, and they were eager to do sort of that. So everybody's watching the situation. It wasn't like they didn't know what was going on in there. Some of them were even going, dude, we're not going to think ill of you if you refuse to go back in that cell. I'm not going to do that. But everybody respected that. They're like, all right. But I'm telling you, God got in that, either put that guy in that cell, the big dude, because he was a monster, dude. That guy was a monster. He was probably the strongest guy on the whole tier. You know, I haven't seen anybody that strong. Like Mike Tyson, tough, big, and strong. Except even Bufker. I mean, he's psychotic. But he just had a sense of fairness or something. Maybe God touched his heart. All of these guys are going to prison for life. Even the two crackheads, they're all facing a long time. 3 of them are definitely going to do the rest of their lives in prison. The 2 older guys, they got caught with a bunch of crack. They're probably going to do a little stretch too. But anyway, that guy made sure that it was fair play, you know. So God either put me in that situation with that guy in there to keep me from getting fucked up, or else he might have touched his heart and maybe changed because, you know, maybe he was thinking about getting right with the Lord because his life was over with, basically. He's going to spend the rest of his life in prison. I think that's where he's coming from because he was reading the Bible. I know that's really what it was all about. I walked into that cell and I'm like, fuck, this is how it ends? Maybe I should have broke weak and refused to go in the cell, but I just couldn't do it. I had too much pride. And, but that's not how it ended, you know? Because I saw the guy was reading the Bible a lot. And that saved me. I'm telling you right now, it saved me because I could have been had. I would have gotten badly fucked up or killed. They'd have killed me if that guy hadn't been in there, if he'd have been mean when I went in there and down for jumping me. They'd have killed me that night with the broomsticks. Stabbed me to death. I'd like to think I could have gotten lucky and wrenched one of the broomsticks away and been able to hold them off, but I doubt it. God protected me, okay? It's that simple.